What do you think about that, Karl, as far as effective messaging, taking on the media and then also using it to fundraise?
Yeah, well, good to use it for fundraising, but making it a big part of your campaign speeches, I'm not certain is useful. Surprise, the media are not for the Republican candidate, so what's new? I think there are three problems with it. One is it drowns out the bigger message. It drowned out last week the message on the economy. It will drown out the message about confronting Islamic extremism. Second of all, it doesn't convert a single swing voter. It plays to the base. He's got those Republicans in his column. He's got his supporters all revved up. Send him emails playing off of that, but if you talk about it in a rally, the media will feel compelled. They'll love it. They want to cover themselves, so they'll make it the heart and soul of the coverage, and it doesn't convert a voter. And third, it makes it sound like he thinks he's going to lose and he's looking for an excuse. And right now, people need to have a confidence that he thinks that while he's the underdog, he can come back, and this doesn't help him.
What about a course correction? What does he need to do?
Well, look, I think it's right that he give a speech on Islamic extremism. He's laid out, I don't agree with all three of the pillars, but he's laid out something that will be attractive to swing voters.
What do you think is the most effective, Karl? If you said you don't like the three, what do you think is the fundamental message that you think could stick?
The most effective is to say, look, we're in a long struggle like we were in the Cold War, and we need to use all the power of the United States in order to defeat this enemy because it represents a threat to us, the security and safety of our people, our allies, and our interests around the world. We will be a safer, more productive, better world if we confront this now, and it will be a long struggle. I think that's a very presidential message. But one speech doesn't solve it. He better have a plan to pursue this in a sustained way this week. This is the opening speech. But like, for example, tomorrow, maybe he could talk about how, frame up how the decision by the Clinton-Obama administration to remove U.S. troops from Iraq led to the explosion of ISIS across the Middle East. He could talk about their failure to have a sustained policy in the aftermath of bringing down Gaddafi. What would he have done differently? He could devote a day to talking about Syria and the president's failure to laying out a red line and then failing to act when the Syrians violated that red line. There are all kinds of ways for him to follow this up, but one speech on one day doesn't drive the issue home. He needs to build not simply a week devoted to terrorism, but a week that develops an arc of the narrative, a story that at the end of the week people say, you know what, I now know a lot more about that whole issue, and I know a lot more about what Donald Trump would do.
So let's take it full circle. Why do you think doing that would be more effective for getting the undecided or independent voters more than the attacks that Donald Trump is waging, whether it's on the media or otherwise?
Well, look, take last week. He started the week with a speech devoted to the economy. He had plenty of things he could have said the rest of the week where the target would have been Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, and instead he went off and got in a bunch of controversies that caused people to have doubts about him. You want to raise doubts about your opponent, and in order to do that, you've got to have a systematic plan. I'm here in Santa Fe this morning, early morning here in Santa Fe. I'm walking over to the studio. Guy recognizes me on the street, stops to talk to me, and he says, look, I would like to vote for Donald Trump. I live in Denver. I'd like to vote for him, but I need to be reassured. I have doubts. African-American immigrant who comes to this country, lives a great life, wants to vote for Trump, and yet he says, you know what, he does and says things that cause me to worry that that's the right thing to do. Trump needs to reassure the swing voters who are up for grabs in this election. All
right, we'll see if he can do it. In the meantime, while he is continuing this attack on the media, I want to ask you about this editorial in the Wall Street Journal, because this could be one of the reasons, when you look at these editorials, why Donald Trump feels attacked. And this is the final line of this editorial. They're talking about the editorial board about what he needs to do to right the ship that they think is not on the right course. And they say this: as for Mr. Trump, he needs to stop blaming everyone else and decide if he wants to behave like someone who wants to be president, or turn the nomination over to Mike Pence. What do you think of that, Karl? Is that some sort of trial balloon that the Wall Street Journal is putting out there? And what do you think of that at this point of the campaign?
Well, I think their point was not in the final paragraph, but in the paragraphs before there, where they said basically what I was saying. You need to have a sustained attack on Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and their failings, and a sustained effort to explain to people why the kind of change that Donald Trump represents is better than the status quo that Hillary Clinton represents. And I wrote a column last week about this. I mean, it's amazing to me that there's no one in that campaign who seems to have a calendar, at least not before last week, that about what they were going to talk about. There's nobody who monitors what she does, so that rather than attacking the media, they say, look, Mr. Trump, she said something today that you ought to go after in your speech later today, rather than, just sort of winging it. There ought to be a deliberate plan to go after her each and every opportunity they can. And thirdly, there's clearly, his attitude has got to be that he's got to focus not on the base of the people who are already committed to him, the 30-some-odd% who are totally for him. He's got to look at the 20% who are up for grabs in this election, because in the last 3 weeks, those are the people who've been sliding towards Clinton and away from him, and he better work rapidly to start getting them back.
Just a quick final question about money. John Roberts just mentioned this fundraising email that went out from the Trump campaign. But in an article last week published about advertising spending, it pointed to the fact that in certain markets, the Green candidate is actually outspending Donald Trump. And in many cases, in the battleground states, he's not spending any money at all when it comes to advertising. What do you think the Trump campaign is doing with the money?
Well, look, first of all, they aren't raising all that much. And it's easy to keep track of the spending by the Trump campaign on media. It is now zero. The only media that has been done by him is a very modest amount by two outside super PACs, several millions of dollars. My opinion, Trump ought to take and write a big check to his own campaign. It is not going to keep people from sending him small gifts, but it's going to send a signal that he is in this to win, and that he's going to be up on the television soon with a message that is complimentary of what he's talking about. Look at this week. What if he were not only giving one speech in one city that will get coverage for one day, but if he were running advertising in support of this message about taking on Islamic extremism in 8 or 9 or 10 battleground states? And the only way for him to now get there is to dip down into that vast fortune he has and begin to run a more conventional campaign. Spot television, day by day, has corroded his standing in states like Colorado and Ohio and Florida and Pennsylvania, and the only way to get back in the game is to start doing advertising of his own, as well as running a better campaign that's focused on the real targets, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. We'll
see what happens with the speech later on today and where it goes from here. And Karl, thanks for getting up early for us in Santa Fe. We always appreciate it. Nice to see you.
Well, you bet. Nice to see you, Jenna.